Well, hello, fellow Kairos volunteers. I've been asked to make this short video to talk about recruitment of KI volunteers, and it's really, I think, about bringing others to visit Jesus through our ministry. My name is Tony Hoban. I'm a member of the John Moroney Regional Committee and the Membership Growth Group. In this video, I want to talk about three main things: why we recruit, the process of recruiting, and also how to talk about Kairos. In terms of why we recruit, the first point, I won't spend too much time on this because I think from the feedback of people coming to the conference, recruitment was one of the top issues that you said you really needed to get a handle on in running your local groups, your regional committees. And I think we can all agree that it's about sustainability. We all know if we look around us, the average age isn't going down, it's going up, and I represent part of that. But so we need more, we need extra people, and we need to probably drop the age a little bit of our members so that we're sustainable into the future. If we don't do anything, of course, we look 10, 15 years ahead of us, it's a pretty scary thought. And really, it's about the mission of Kairos. I think we all believe in this ministry that we're involved in, we're quite passionate about. So we really owe it to the ministry, we owe it to God, to Jesus, to really keep this ministry going into the future. So I think we all appreciate that. We need to recruit so that we have people coming in who will follow in our footsteps and keep this ministry going into the future. So what's the process? I want to outline a number of steps. Again, I'll go through these quickly, and I have covered some of these on the previous Zoom meetings that we've done, and some of you may have seen those Zoom meetings, and hopefully you can then contribute to the discussion. But hopefully everyone will get something new out of this. So I want to talk about a thing called the sales pipeline in a moment. I think that's really quite a motivating tool to help you understand what you're doing when you're going out to recruit. And then we'll go through these other points. But let's go first to the sales pipeline. I think the sales pipeline is a very positive approach because it really says, as an example, for every church presentation we do, we might get 5 people to express interest, for example, and then out of these 5, 3 might respond to follow-up phone calls, and out of those 3, 1 person might end up volunteering. That's an indicator of the kind of numbers, and you'll get your own feel for the numbers as you go through, but that might be a rough indication. So that really means that if we look at classifying people, we might say that the people who fill in a form when we go to do a talk to a church or other group, we call them leads, the people who fill in the form. The people who then come maybe to an information session or respond to a follow-up call, we might call them prospects, to use sales terminology, and the ones who agree to volunteer, that they're in sales talk customers. So there's a filtering process, but the numbers generally diminish as we go through that process. So if we use the numbers I gave you a moment ago, 15 presentations might be needed to achieve 15 volunteers, because we might ultimately only end up with 1 new member out of each presentation. And that'll vary according to the groups you present to. We know that we're targeting Christians, so we're going to be mainly talking to church groups, but we might find other Christians in other men's or women's groups in the community. So I think the sales pipeline is quite helpful because it shows that you don't need to get dejected if you don't get 10 volunteers every time you talk to a church group. You don't have to have heaps of sign-ups, but it's a process. And if you don't start the process, you don't get the volunteers at the end. So the most important thing is to start the process, get out there doing the presentations, because volunteers will eventually start filtering through that funnel. So I guess my point is that, you know, if you need 15 members, 15 volunteers next year, have you got 15 people who can each go out and do a presentation? Or maybe you got 5 people who can do 3 presentations. You do the numbers to suit your own situation, but that's just a rule of thumb that you might use to know how many presentations you've got to get out and do using that sales pipeline, just to give you a bit of guidance. Secondly, I believe every regional committee should have a recruitment leader. That's someone whose focus is on really not doing all the recruitment, but leading the recruitment process. They're the ones who are going to keep harassing you about how many presentations have we done, who are our volunteers. And that leads to our second point. I think we need to have, to use a fancy term, Kairos ambassadors. They may be people from your regional committee. They may be people who have done a Kairos program before and are keen to promote it and are willing to go out and do one or a few presentations, but get those people on board who are going to be out there promoting Kairos. And then do some training. I'll go through in a little while what a Kairos presentation might look like, but make sure that they have the tools they need to go out and to be Kairos ambassadors in the community. Then it's about targeting churches and other groups for the talks. I think Vern spoke yesterday about using data like census data sensibly and well, and I know Kairos is going to be feeding through to you more support to do that, but that doesn't mean you can't start this process straight away. And in fact, I do advocate that as soon as you get back from the conference, you start planning how your recruitment program is going to roll out if you already hadn't got one. And then you make calls and visits to gain permission to talk to churches and service groups. That might take a few times to get through to the pastor or whoever's responsible. There's some under-denominational sensitivities. You may be better to have a Catholic to talk to Catholic groups. You may be better to have a Baptist to talk to Baptist groups and so on. Sometimes there's terminologies that we might use that might not hit the mark in other denominations. So if you can't get a Catholic to talk to a Catholic group, at least get some briefing from some Catholic volunteers about what the sensitivities might be in talking to a parish, and the same for all the other different denominations. And really importantly, I think you need to have recruitment on the agenda for every regional committee. That should be a standing item so that it's in front of everyone's eyes all the time. And that might be saying, okay, what are the presentations coming up? What are the results been from the presentations? How many ambassadors we got on board? Those types of things, so that recruitment is an ongoing issue on every regional committee meeting every time you meet. I'm going to quickly go through also now just how you might talk about Kairos. And I've done a full presentation on Zoom before about this, which goes much longer. So this is very much a summarised form, and you're going to get my handouts, so you'll have a bit of an idea of the process. But let me just walk you through how you might do it. So I'm going to talk firstly about a presentation template. So this presentation template, you could use this to talk about Kairos. You could use this to do a homily. You could use it for any sermon, any type of presentation. It's really that flexible. So what it's really about is having a creative opening. It could be a joke, could be a story, could be a video if you have access to audio visual. And then most people have the ability to retain 3 to 5 key themes or headings, topic headings. So I would have 3 topic headings, and then you go through, you talk about topic 1, you go through and talk about the details of topic 2 and 3, etc. And then you recap those 3. So again, you're giving people an extra opportunity to remember your 3 key points. Then you might have some final information, and then you might have a conclusion. How this might look for Kairos, again, you may or may not have the opportunity to use a video. You might tell a creative story. You might ask, how many people do you think are in prisons in Australia? And just ask for some sample answers, and then tell them 42,000. The new Sydney football stadium holds about that many people. Do you believe that there's actually that many people in prisons in Australia? So some sort of creative opening. You then might talk about, your 3 topics might be, firstly, what is Kairos? Why you might get involved in Kairos, and what's the impact of Kairos? And then you go through and talk about those 3 topics in more detail. And again, you'd create that, depending on how much time you had available for your talk. You might have 3 minutes, you might have 10 minutes, depending on the group. So you'd tailor that information to suit that. So you go through those 3 topics, talk about what Kairos is, talk about why get involved, talk about the impact of Kairos, the reduction in recidivism. And then you'd recap those three things, and then you'd talk about how people get involved. You had sign-up sheets with you, and then you'd have a conclusion to your talk. So that's just how that presentation template could be used for a Kairos talk. And then in terms of point B, we're encouraged to talk about all aspects of the ministry. So I'm involved in Kairos Men's Inside, but I should also talk about Kairos Women Inside, and also outside courses. And it's really important in the bold type there that you ask people specifically. If you're asking people to volunteer on your next program, tell them what the date of the short course is and tell them what the preparation dates are, because otherwise they might not be available. So you might be collecting prospects that are never really going to come to fruition. So be upfront about the time commitment. In terms of your talks, practice. We all have different levels of presentation capabilities. I know I need to practice a number of times before I do a presentation, a homily. So just practice and make sure you're confident with the material. Always respect time limits, probably something you know, but if you're given 3 minutes, do not exceed 3 minutes. I know leading a parish community, the people who go over time, the ones I really seriously consider if I'll have them back, even if they're from our own local parish groups. Respect that time that you're given. And follow up interested people. If that people signed a form, follow up quickly in terms of, again, back to the sales analogy, don't let them go cold. And the final point, how a backwards schedule might work. So what do I mean by a backwards schedule? Well, let's say pick June next year. If you know that you've got a short course coming up in June 2023, well, that's your deadline. So that's when the course has to happen. So you'd be doing your team training probably in March to May. So you'd be having those 4 team building sessions then. So that's step 2. But what's the first step? Well, you really need to be out there in November 2022 and February 2023, I'd suggest, given that we know December and January are pretty much write-offs for doing anything substantial in the community in Australia. So really, you haven't got much time for when you get back from this conference to really get those talks up and running, contacting churches and other groups. So that'd be my suggestion. If you say had a course coming up in June next year, it seems a long way off, but really that preparation needs to start pretty soon and follow up in February, or maybe you have to do 1 or 2 talks early February and then follow them up. So that would be my suggestion about how a backwards schedule might work. My summary is, we know this phrase from short course, Jesus is counting on you. And if you have a choice to start tomorrow or today, I'd start today. Happy for any of you to email me at that email address there for further information. I'm passionate about Kairos. I'm passionate about making our ministry future-proof for the future. So I really hope that this short information that I've been able to share, a little bit of information, can help you to make your local version of Kairos sustainable well into the future. Thanks for listening.